summer of 2002. I can't see The Rock and Brock Lesnar having a feud. Now, I just don't see it working. I mean, when The Rock was in his younger years of his wrestling career, when he was the champion, dropping the title Brock Lesnar to pass the torch to Lesnar. I mentioned this on my show a couple of weeks ago. Brock Lesnar had the torch passed to him by The Rock. The Rock didn't need to pass the torch this year at WrestleMania. That's why I initially knew that The Rock was going to win at WrestleMania, because he could afford to win and Cena could afford to lose, because The Rock passed the torch technically 10 years ago. He didn't need to pass it again for the second time to John Cena. Brock Lesnar's been there for it all, and he's beaten, if not every big name, the majority of the big names in WWE. He's beaten The Big Show. He's beaten The Undertaker. He's beaten The Rock. He's beaten John Cena in a match that made John Cena look absolutely ridiculous. Brock Lesnar definitely helped push John Cena to be the next big thing in the WWE. Of course, Brock Lesnar's catchphrase and slogan that sold a lot of t-shirts in the early 2000s was "Here comes the pain and the next big thing." Slogans that were placed on him by a genius in professional wrestling, Paul Heyman. Rumors are running around Paul Heyman's going to be returning to manage Brock Lesnar for the first time in almost a decade. I don't see that one happening. Although I do see Brock Lesnar having a lot of momentum, more momentum than he did when he was initially brought in to WWE and feuded with Rob Van Dam, a guy who's appeared here on the show and talked about Lesnar very highly. I see him having a lot more momentum than he did 8 years ago, and it's going to be really fun to see Lesnar feud with some of the new talent initiative stars, especially someone like Sheamus, who's never been one to back down from a fight. I do see Sheamus and Lesnar being a potential feud. I do see Lesnar and Kane being a potential feud. I do see Lesnar and Randy Orton being a potential feud, because it would be really cool to see how the unique styles of Lesnar and Randy Orton coexist together inside a ring, because it's really important to see, the kind of chemistry that wrestlers have with one another. I think Randy Orton and Brock Lesnar would have a magnificent chemistry inside of the ring. We never did get the opportunity to see Lesnar and Randy Orton feud in a long-term program, so it would be really interesting to see what they would bring to a match if it were to be offered at a pay-per-view like SummerSlam for the WWE title. I do see Lesnar being the WWE champion, just not right away, because he doesn't need it. I mean, he's been WWE champion multi-times in his career. It's an accolade that needs to be on someone like Del Rio or Sheamus or even Daniel Bryan, who got over in such a huge way the night after WrestleMania in Miami. He got over bigger than anybody on the show, and he wasn't even in a match. He got over more than what Lesnar did, I think. Lesnar got a huge pop. One of the biggest pops of the night, and I alluded to that in a column that I wrote for In This Corner with Jonathan Clarke. I also alluded to the fact that Lesnar sold more t-shirts than any of the biggest names in WWE in the early 2000s, probably more t-shirts than The Rock or Stone Cold did in the early 2000s. And of course, they were huge names in the early 2000s. They carried the company on their shoulders, for Christ's sake, and carried the majority of the pressure. But, just to follow up on what I said in the column, I think that Lesnar's going to have a lot of momentum. I don't think he's going to be champion right away, which a lot of fans are probably jumping to the conclusion of, oh, Lesnar's back, he's going to take the title off Punk. I do see Lesnar and Punk having a feud, and it could be one of the potential first feuds of Brock Lesnar, because CM Punk shot on Brock Lesnar and how he took his ball and went home in that incredible Raw promo of last year's summer, when CM Punk, of course, had this change of heart and became the cult of personality for the first time in his career and became, quote, the real CM Punk. I do see that, and he's one of the suggestions in a poll that I threw up on our website, some of the potential feuds of Brock Lesnar for the first time in 8 years, Randy Orton, CM Punk, and a couple of others are there for our weekly poll, and I want you to weigh in on that, so definitely contribute to our poll by checking it out on our social media pages and on our official website. There are over 7 or 8 suggestions for a potential first feud of Lesnar for the first time in 8 years. Some of the most memorable feuds Lesnar had were the matches with The Undertaker, because it was based on a lot of personal animosity. The feud that he had with The Big Show, where Lesnar, of course, lost the WWE title for the first time. I believe he lost it for the first time in his career, actually, to The Big Show in 2002. So we have Big Show, Undertaker. The feud with John Cena was funny because all the promo work that went into the match leading up to it, not the actual match, but the actual promos and the video packages and the hype for the match was fantastic. Lesnar and Goldberg was great, and of course Eddie Guerrero versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE title. Someone who Lesnar, of course, lost the title to and has never been able to live it down. Eddie Guerrero, and of course that was in the middle of the Brock Lesnar-Goldberg angle on SmackDown. That got over SmackDown in such a huge way. The down point of Brock Lesnar's career was when they had this match at WrestleMania 20. It was Lesnar and Goldberg, and you knew both wrestlers were leaving the company even before the match happened. Stone Cold was the referee. He got the biggest pop of the night for stunning the two of them. But you knew the two of them were leaving, and the match was so stupid and pathetic. I mean, there was no action, there was no excitement in the match, there was more booing in that match than any match that was on the card for WrestleMania 20, so that match really let me down. So I guess with the embarrassment of how the match turned out at WrestleMania 20, a match that was supposedly supposed to be the biggest one of the 4-hour show, they just left the company and felt no reason to come back. Goldberg had a bigger reason to come back than Brock Lesnar. Lesnar had beaten everybody. He had proven everything there was to prove. He was the 2002 King of the Ring. The last pay-per-view offering of the King of the Ring was in 2002. Lesnar won that one. He won the Royal Rumble in 2003, eliminating the Big Show as one of the final competitors. I do believe it was either the Big Show or the Undertaker. I can't remember which one. Lesnar definitely did. I think it was the Undertaker actually. But Lesnar definitely did everything there was to do for a singles competitor to do. So he had no reason to come back. Goldberg had a reason to come back because his first run in WWE sucked. One of the people that were disappointed over Brock Goldberg's first run in the WWE was Linda McMahon, who lashed out at that on a couple of professional wrestling news websites. So Goldberg, I think, had the more legitimate reason to come back. He probably would have been a better person to bring back the first night after WrestleMania than Brock Lesnar. But Lesnar's return did have a lot of people talking. It was funny going on WrestlingNewsWorld.com the other day and reading a column about how many fans thought that was the most awesome thing that ever happened in WWE in the last decade. I remember reading one column where one fan was so excited about Lesnar's return and believed that it was the most awesome week in WWE history. That article can be found at WrestlingNewsWorld.com, and it's one of the articles that have been archived for you on our Twitter and Facebook pages, courtesy of our RSS newsfeed. The article, of course, originally came from WrestlingNewsWorld.com, and this fan was so amazed by everything that had happened so quickly, one thing after another, this particular week in the WWE. And I always like the night after WrestleMania. It's one of the biggest nights of the year, and I'm no stranger to admitting the fact of being fans of nights after WrestleMania and draft lotteries that happen every year after WrestleMania, because it's such a course-changing night. The complexion of the WWE definitely does change the night after WrestleMania and after the draft lottery, and the day after the draft with the supplemental draft on the WWE's official website, WWE.com. A lot of stuff is tweeted on their Twitter page, brought up on their Facebook for conversation, and now on their YouTube channel. We're going to have a lot of coverage of a lot of momentous things happening after WrestleMania. They stream a lot of stuff there. They cover a lot of events from their website, and it's fun. But the thing that ruins it all are these professional wrestling news websites. We were reading rumors of Lesnar returning on professional wrestling news websites leading into WrestleMania. He was supposed to have been there at WrestleMania. There was a reason why Lesnar's debut was put off, or return, I should say, was put off until the night after WrestleMania. He was initially supposed to make his return the night of WrestleMania and get involved in a match like Cena versus The Rock or the end of an era Hell in a Cell match, which probably would have been the better place for Lesnar to make his return in, because he had a lot of history with someone like The Undertaker and a lot of personal animosity. If you don't believe me, check out a UFC interview The Undertaker did when he attended a UFC show. He talks about Brock Lesnar having a lot of personal animosity with Lesnar. When asked about fighting Brock Lesnar in a match for the first time in years, The Undertaker kind of shuts the reporter down and says because of a lot of personal issues he wouldn't fight Lesnar because probably of a fear of killing him. The Undertaker's never been intimidated by anybody, let alone Brock Lesnar, and he actually shuts the idea down of fighting Brock Lesnar in a match or a UFC competitive match. It's interesting. Find the YouTube video if you can. I'll probably tweet it. But Lesnar is back now. It's going to be fun to see, how Lesnar fits in, especially with the new talent, the new superstars, people he's never had an opportunity to feud with. And as I mentioned, for our weekly poll, we have some of the potential people Lesnar could feud with. Everybody from Randy Orton to Chris Jericho, Lesnar's obviously going to be a fan favorite the first few months of his return because everybody's going to be talking about Lesnar. Once the novelty of Lesnar's return dies down a little bit, Lesnar will probably make a transition from a babyface into a heel because some of his best work came when he was a heel. The promos of people referring to him as a demon, how he hated a lot of the fan favorites. That was classical Brock Lesnar for you as a fan favorite. I mean, a lot of fans were kind of just sucking up to Lesnar because of his size, his presence inside of the ring. His best work came when he was a heel. After the novelty of Lesnar's return wears off, I see Lesnar making a transition from a babyface into a heel, where we'll get better work from Lesnar with the same kind of moveset he had 10 years ago with the F5, the belly-to-belly suplexes, implementing a bit of UFC style into his wrestling, moveset like Ken Shamrock did when coming over from the UFC into wrestling in the 90s, something that Ken Shamrock did and did very well. And Lesnar was one of those guys. Bobby Lashley was another one who did it very well too, making a transition from a UFC fighter, stepping into something that was real, into something that was a combination of theatrics and athletic ability being put on display at its finest. I think Lesnar is going to sell a lot of t-shirts, probably not as many as he did in the early 2000s, because we have a lot of big names now like Randy Orton, John Cena, who are receiving the majority of the publicity. Maybe Brock Lesnar will feel the same way Batista did about John Cena and believe that John Cena being the face of WWE when you had all these legends like the Ultimate Warrior, who was referred to as an icon by The Rock in one of The Rock's latest promos. I believe he referred to the Ultimate Warrior as an icon in front of the Rocky Balboa statue, actually. That was interesting how The Rock referred to the Warrior. You had all these icons, getting back to the point here, like the Warrior, Bret Hart, and now you have someone like John Cena carrying the company. Maybe Lesnar will feel the same way Batista did. But something else I have to throw out. We're talking about potential feuds Lesnar could be involved in. How cool would it be if Batista returned after issuing